Hello dear students. In today's class we will understand sixth part of an interesting play, The Collectors. When Glenn and Wayne try to escape, they are sent flying across the kitchen by Mrs. Brown. We'll continue. Please open your textbook, students. Page number 52. Mr. Brown, stop that. We don't want any of you damaged. And either one of us alone is more than a match for any 5 feeble earth children. Carol, if you try to keep us here, the police will come looking for us. Mr. Brown, will they? They won't find you. You're going away. Tracy, no. Where are you taking us? Mrs. Brown, shall I tell them? Mr. Brown, why not? It might calm them to know there is no avoiding their fate. Mrs. Brown, we are taking you to our home planet. Glenn, home planet? Carol, you're not from Earth. You're aliens. Mr. Brown, exactly. Wayne, but you're human. You look human. Mrs. Brown, we can take on any shape we wish for a time. So can our spaceship. Mr. Brown, at the moment, as you have seen, it looks like a Earth house very useful for our mission. Mrs. Brown, in a few moments we shall convert it to a spaceship again and return to our normal shape. Mr. Brown, so you had better drink. It will make the shock of takeoff easier for you. Tracy, but you must not take us. You can't. Mr. Brown, how wrong you are. Wayne, but why us? Why pick on us? Mrs. Brown, you were available. We collect creatures from other worlds like you. Carol, why? What for? Mr. Brown, for experiment and scientific study. You will be useful to us. Pete, oh no, we won't. Flinging the cupboard door open, Pete holds up the walking stick two-handed. Come one step nearer, I smash this equipment. Mr. Brown, no. Mrs. Brown, do nothing yet, too dangerous. Pete, grab a chair, Glenn, and come over here. If there's so much as move, smash all this. Glenn, right. He joins Pete with the chair raised and ready. Mr. Brown, smash any parts of those panels and you can kill us all. Pete, I'll take that chance. Carol, you and the rest get near the outer door. Carol, yes, come on, you lot, quick. All the children except Pete and Glenn cluster against the door to the outside. Mr. Brown, they are only children. We can rush them. Attack. Mrs. Brown, no, they are wild. Keep still. Mr. Brown, we can't let this happen. Beaten by inferior creatures. Mrs. Brown, we must. If they break any part of that equipment, we are stranded here on Earth. We can do no repairs here. Pete, you, go and bring Mr. Hunt and the others out here. Mr. Brown, no. Pete taps the panel with the stick and swings it back for a real blow. Mrs. Brown, go and fetch them. Mr. Brown goes out. Pete, you, how do we open the back door and the door in the porch? Mrs. Brown, yes, all right. It's that control down there on the left. It's marked with yellow light. Press it. Glenn, don't trust her, Pete. Pete, I won't. Listen, if those doors don't open at once, Glenn and I start wrecking. Mrs. Brown, I'm telling the truth. Press the control. Press it. Pete, watch her, Glenn. And if this is a trick, use that chair. Glenn, don't you worry, mate. Pete presses the control and the doors open. Carol, it's all right, Pete. It worked. Mr. Hunt, Miss Swan and Mrs. Jones stagger dazedly into the room. Mr. Brown is behind them. Pete, help them. Get them outside and well away from the house. Wayne, what about you? Pete, don't worry, get going. The children help the adults out through the back door, leaving Pete and Glenn facing Mr. and Mrs. Brown. Please look at meanings of new words. Aliens, relating to creatures from another planet. Flinging, throw or hurl forcefully. Cluster, a group of similar things or people that are closely together. Inferior, lower in rank, status or quality. Stranded, trapped. Porch, covered entrance or portico. Wreck, to destroy or badly damage something. Stagger, walk or move unsteadily as if about to fall. Dazedly, in a very confused way when you are unable to think clearly. Moving on to the explanation. When Glenn and Wayne try to escape, they are sent flying across the kitchen by Mrs. Brown. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Brown reveal the truth that they are aliens, and they have taken the form of humans, and the house is their spaceship. They also say that the children can't escape, and if they were to drink the juice, it would lessen the shock of the takeoff of the spaceship. Mr. Brown also lets out the secret that children are collected for the sake of experiments and scientific study. At that point, Pete, immediately flinging the cupboard door open, holds up the walking stick two-handed. He had seen the equipment being stored in the cupboard and know that the aliens needed it badly. Now Browns are frightened by this act of Pete. Pete, by holding the walking stick, warned aliens if they made any wrong move, he would smash the equipment in the cupboard. He takes the help of Glenn. Glenn joins Pete with the chair raised and ready to smash the equipment. Then Pete asks the other children to get near the outer door. When Mr. Brown is ready to attack, Mrs. Brown calms him down by saying if they break any part of that equipment, they are trapped on the earth and they can't do any repairs on the earth. Pete ordered Mr. Brown to bring their teachers. When Mr. Brown went to bring their teachers, Pete inquires with Mrs. Brown about the switches to open the back door and the doors in the porch. Mrs. Brown says that the control down on the left marked with the yellow light has to be pressed to open the doors. Glenn suspects and asks Pete not to believe in the words of Mrs. Brown. But Pete says that if the doors don't open at once, he would start wrecking all the panels. Now Pete presses the yellow button and the doors open. At the same time, Mr. Brown brings all the teachers to the kitchen. Pete asks Carol and Wayne to take all of them out. The children and the teachers go out through the back door, leaving Pete and Glenn facing Mr. and Mrs. Brown. Will Pete and Glenn escape from the aliens? We'll find it out in the next class. Dear students, in today's class we have understood 6th part of an interesting play, The Collectors. Now, I am going to end up this class. Bye for now. Thank you. Have a nice day.